Let's go live to Republican strategist John Jordan. John, we will get to the gun laws shortly, but let's start with the Supreme Court and an extraordinary decision.
Yes, today was a day that was dreaded and hoped for, depending which side of it you were on. As a lawyer myself, I would say that this ruling isn't as significant as the media is making it out to be. All this case does is send abortion back to each state to decide, and every state in the United States, just like as in Australia, are the ones that regulate medical care, surgical procedures, licensing of doctors, and so forth. So all this does is return it to the democratically elected people at the state level. It doesn't by itself change any abortion laws nationally.
So, John, fill us in. Is it those traditional red states that will be quick to ban abortion?
No, actually, the red states are probably going to be more restrictive on it because that's the consensus of the people that live there. Just like the different states, different laws in many different ways reflect the values of those states. So California, overrun with homelessness and letting criminals go in the street, is part of reflective of California's value system. However, just to put it in perspective, in Mississippi, the case that the Supreme Court decided on here, they were merely saying after 15 weeks and regulating later term abortions. So if you look at the Mississippi case here, that caused the Roe v. Wade to be overturned, the law in Mississippi really kind of is not too different from those the laws in most of Australia, per my research. 15 weeks, 16 weeks is a number beyond which, in Eastern Australia, Western Australia, it's a lot more restrictive. But the law in Mississippi here isn't that different from most of Australia.
It's a legacy decision in a way because of Donald Trump appointees on the Supreme Court.
Yeah, I mean, there were vacancies there, and they were appointed by President Trump. President Biden has just appointed one Supreme Court justice. That's the way our system works. But in this case, the court, in fact, Ruth Bader Ginsburg, the liberal leftist lioness of the court, who was revered by many on the left in the United States, herself said that Roe v. Wade was poorly reasoned. There is no mention of abortion in the Constitution. And under our system, those legal matters which are not expressly contained within the Constitution are reserved to each of the states to decide for themselves. And that's clearly what happened here. The constitutional order was kind of put right again in that sense.
John, do you think the story that we had just before welcoming you to the program on gun laws, are these decisions that will change much?
No, there was a gun law case yesterday that came out, and it was a very narrow ruling. And all it said was that certain states cannot deny a concealed carry permit based upon the whims of a bureaucrat. States are still free to regulate concealed carry permits. They can still license whomever. They can still change the training requirements, licensing requirements, background checks, and restrictions on it, however each state sees fit. But a state cannot allow a bureaucrat or an unelected official to say, well, I'm going to give it to this class of people, but not that class of people, unless it's a standard that applies to everybody, like, for example, a mental health check, criminal background checks, and the like.
Do you think we'll see any change to laws in and around semi-automatic weapons? Because when these laws were drafted in the Constitution, basically we were talking about muskets.
Yeah, no, I don't. I think, the United States is very different from Australia. Obviously, Australia's laws changed dramatically after 1996, the Tasmania, the Port Arthur massacre. Australia is an island. The United States is 25 times the size, with basically an unguarded southern border that's over 1,000 miles long. You are going to get criminals are always going to have guns in the United States, especially in the blue states where they're not being prosecuted or put in jail. The criminals are just being turned loose. So here you have, law-abiding people are the ones that are being affected by these laws, not criminals. The criminals are going to have them regardless of what the criminal justice system does with them. It doesn't make any sense to punish law-abiding people who just want to defend themselves.
It's heartbreaking. We're looking at some of the images of the children killed. It is heartbreaking and unsensical, really, a lot of what we see.
Oh, absolutely. It's heartbreaking. It's heartbreaking. Hundreds of people or thousands of people are killed in car accidents too every year, and I'm not equating them. But the loss of any life is something to be mourned. But what I'd like to see talked about in the media is all of the kids that are killed by gun violence by criminals in America's blue cities and blue states every day. When those district attorneys and those governors won't prosecute gang offenders, drug offenders. What about fentanyl and all of that? So we're going to look at human tragedy. Let's look at it holistically and attack these problems in a systemic way.
John, you have a significant military background in and around the Navy. What do you make with what's happening in the Ukraine at the moment and the whole idea of the Ukraine being accepted into the EU? Obviously, it's not NATO, but it's something.
It's a start. All for Ukraine being taken into the EU. The Russians are making some gains in the Donetsk and the Donbass region in the last few weeks, but they're doing so at enormous cost. And as time goes by, time is more the Ukrainians' friend than the Russians' friend, I would think, especially as the more advanced U.S. European weapon systems start to make their way in theater. Russians are having recruiting and continuing to have recruiting and morale problems, as the Ukrainians are taking a lot of casualties too. But soon the HIMARS systems and a lot of these other weapon systems that are coming from the UK and Germany should be making their way in theater. And while there's been a loss of territory on the part of Ukrainians, it's cost the Russians probably more than it was worth. But this is going to go on for a bit longer. And Ukrainian membership in the EU is, I think, something for all Western-speaking, freedom-loving people to celebrate.
Does it also strengthen those countries around the Ukraine, like Moldova and others?
Yeah, it does. Moldova was also given a conditional invite, and that has to really irk Moscow. You have Finland and Sweden about to join NATO. You have Ukraine and Moldova about to be brought into the EU. The entire rationale, strategic goal of Russia was to destabilize Ukraine and not have a growing NATO and a prosperous Eastern Europe on Russia's doorstep, so that the Russian people themselves could decide: do you want to be part of the EU or do you want to be part of the despotic Putin regime? Whelping Moldova in there is certainly a step in the right direction. But look for Russia to try to destabilize Moldova with the Russian-speaking enclaves there in the not too distant future.
Yeah, absolutely. John, always good to chat.